All right, we're live.
Great. So, anyone, again, do you have a spiritual thought, or I guess there was a lot of them today?
Um, yeah, I saw. Well, it's from the other class, but I think it applies. It's in Second Corinthians 8:21 that says providing for honest things, not only in the sight of the Lord, but also in the sight of men. Because it's about that no matter what careers we are following or whatever work we are asked to do, be sure that you are completely honest in everything. And I think that it could be maybe apply to this case if we consider that they were uh, making a terrific work, uh, raising a lot of revenues and investing a lot of capital in different promising business that really brought a lot of potential companies that as Facebook or Twitter that have really changed the entire world.
Good.
Yeah, really good.
Thank you. Thanks. I guess I could lead it. So,
Okay.
there's a couple. There's a couple of questions here. Um, First one mentions so far we have learned to evaluate business models of startups, and it says today we will examine the business model decisions of a startup in a mature industry. As a group, begin by discussing the following questions. Was the VC industry attractive for A16Z to enter in 2009? What was the competition like at that time? What was the typical fate of the new entrants in this industry? Why was this so? What were the trends in VC fund performance during this time?
So I'll make a few comments. So was the venture capital an attractive industry in 2009? Well, I think that for as far as IPOs, the case makes some mention of that IPOs became it went from where there was a lot of IPOs in the pre-dot-com like bubble. There was a lot of IPOs that were happening, especially with tech companies, and then post tech bubble and as well as post Enron and WorldCom and the introduction of the SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. It created a climate where it just was not very attractive to try to do a public offering with all the regulation and all of the compliance that public companies have to go through. It's very expensive for a startup to do. So I think that my opinion is that was it an attractive industry to enter in 2009? I don't think it was particularly attractive, but I think that the Andreessen Horowitz model was kind of like it was disruptive, it was different. So I thought it was pretty cool that they had been there, they had been in that space, and they were going to attempt to kind of change the way that venture capital was going to be done. So I think it's not an attractive industry to enter, but they had kind of a case to enter it. My 2 cents, anyway.
Okay, I agree. Um, there is a exhibit. I just can't find it. I'm looking for it right now. Exhibit 5 kind of mentions number of VC firms in existence. So in
Mm,
'92 there was 358, and then by 2002 there was over 1,000, which was when I guess like you mentioned Nate.com and all that stuff. And by the time it was
yeah.
2012, it had gone down because of what happened with the market and such, but it seems like it was in right. And what they
Yeah,
noticed, or what the case kind of mentioned it, or I guess even the New York Times, it says, mentioned that it was kind of a good thing what they were doing because it was kind of like a dead industry or something that needed to happen in that industry, right?
yeah,
There was a couple of top dogs in there now, but things were just being doing the same way, and it needed some change, and I guess their model was a bit disruptive for that. And I mean, if the market was kind of going up, not the best, but still pretty good, right? Not that bad. So kind of in between, kind of the same thought.
yeah.
But actually, in the same reading, I found that. Oh, wait a minute. Here's that in 2009 they were able to raise up to 300 million just to make the investment in the information technology startup. So I think that's where that usually we read later that usually most venture capital just cover about 10 portfolio companies boards, but Andreessen and Horowitz were have the resources to make a great investment, not just as co-founders, but also as what they call the angel investment, which are like some they give some investment in order to obtain certain participation in their board, right?
Uh, well, the
Or not
angel
necessarily.
investor, I think like an angel investor is someone who is wealthy enough that they're classified as take a risk of investing 500,000 or 1 million in a company
Mm-hmm.
where they have enough wealth that if they were to lose that, it's not going to wipe them out. Like I don't know how an angel becomes classified as an angel, but an angel is someone who they have enough wealth that they can do a placement like personally in a company they can invest.
Okay, so they not necessarily became as part of the board or like they get some market share of the company, I mean.
Well, I think if you're going to put money in, you're going to get some shares. Usually that does you get a board seat because you have a big enough share, right? So yeah, I guess that would get you on the board. You're right in that sense. I don't know if that happens every time, but usually you're a shareholder at that point, so you're on the board.
Yeah, because actually the angel investment that they made between 2005 and 2009 were up to 4 million in 45 tech startups, including Twitter, Dig, Jawbone, AppNexus, Asana, LinkedIn, etc., and etc., and etc. So, wow, that's incredible for me.
Market was picking up, right? Mostly in tech. Um, Maybe not so in the VC industry. They actually came into a good market, you could say, that was starting to pick up again.
Yeah, and they're like experts in that field, right? Because Andreessen had been there from the beginning, and
Yeah.
Horowitz is kind of a key guy. So this is an industry that they know all about.
Yeah. So I guess that kind of answers in the other question. It kind of it says, how did they plan to succeed in this difficult environment? And the thing is, they had been in that environment for the past 10 years, right? Doing their own businesses, working for other tech startups, um, getting funds from other VCs, and they noticed, and they didn't like working with VCs. If you read some of the what are they called again?
Exhibits,
Some of the
those
exhibits, they
do I know
Yeah.
super awesome. It's like what not to do. I thought that was really cool too.
Yeah. What I thought interesting is that the rap verses that he was putting there just to start with to like describe this is pretty strong. But yeah, they knew about it and they knew what they didn't like and they knew the other side, right? As entrepreneurs seeking for um and help, they knew what people would appreciate, right? And they
Yeah,
knew the weaknesses that the competition had. So that was part of their approach, right? They knew the weaknesses and they try to do something different. Their approach was
yeah,
different, which made it
yeah,
attractive.
yeah. I love that exhibit too. Like they're fake casual and they want to grab a cup of coffee. Like some of those things were so common sense that you could
Yeah.
imagine that it goes on, right? And those guys were like, they're like, we're not going to do that. That's like stupid.
Well, along the case, it also mentioned how many times when they would arrive late to meetings and then kind of show up and just be on the phone on their computers, and that was something that they didn't do. Like they would call them back right away and be on their toes just to help out the people. And part of it was having the network, right? The people that they hired used to be CEOs or they started their own businesses, so they knew how to help. They've done it before, so
Yeah,
they couldn't make it up really. No, they knew what people were going through, and that way it was a bit more than just giving them money.
yeah. Theirs was like an honest approach, and it's just it was so much more attractive. Their whole business model to me, I like it.
Yeah, it seemed a bit more like you say, honest, um, desire to help them out, not just like this is what we're gonna get out of it.
Yeah,
They were they invested. Like, you could say that they probably cared, which is something that entrepreneurs or startups want, right? Because
yeah,
they can have the money, but what they need is people to actually help them get to the
yeah,
next level.
Actually, just 3% of the VC firms generate 95% of the total industry returns. So I think that they also got a little bit of, well, they were not lucky, but they knew which projects or which plans will be the most profitable for the company, and that became just as Facebook or Twitter that really changed an entire generation because now everything is by this social media. So I think that they really knew this market and they were able to invest in the right projects in this time.
good point.
Yeah, they knew the market. And then I guess the next question kind of mentions or asks, why was A16Z specifically targeting first-time technical co-founders? Which is part of it, right? They've done it before.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I like how they said that. I think it was Andreessen said that one of the VCs in one of his companies, like after they had made a placement, he made some like casual comment to him, "Hey, we're going to replace you with a real CEO."
Hmm.
That's like, man, that's offensive. I just
I
really
know.
like the approach, and they called out how they named like a bunch of companies that were successful that had like the CEOs that were the founding CE. They were still the same people.
Hmm.
There's an argument for bringing in someone who is more capable. I'm sure that is the case many times, but it seems like uh, Andreessen and Horowitz, they're smart enough to recognize when it's a good idea to keep the same guy in.
Yeah, and pull it all the way through. I mean, they started a business, they're invested in it. They're the ones that are going to see it through, right? If you bring someone in from the outside, even if they're more capable, they might not be as invested with the idea, so that could lead to some failure, right?
Yeah.
And then came the examples of all the companies that have done it. Amazon, Facebook, Sony, some big companies.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other VC firms would, kind of come around and be like, all right, we give you some money, now let's start hiring this kind of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Companies usually lose a lot of people when that starts happening.
Yeah,
Because it's not run the same way.
yeah. Hear like stories of how once they make that investment and someone else is on the board or whatever, they start bringing in other people and it kind of wrecks the culture, wrecks the company.
Yeah, it does. It does. So let's see. It says, how has the cost of tech startups impacted the VC industry? How has it impacted the need for technical co-founders to raise capital? Do these trends apply to the other sectors such as life sciences or clean tech? I don't actually get that question.
So I think in the case it talked about how years ago it was pretty expensive to start a tech company, but now with open source software and virtualization, the cost is lower. Even like setting up infrastructure with like an Amazon
True.
S3 and the elastic storage, and that stuff's so cheap now that they don't need the same initial capital to start. So I think that affects the the Series A. Is that what the question was about? Rounds with tech, but
The cost,
for clean tech or biotech or some of those other industries, I think that they probably don't have. They're not enjoying a reduction in like the tech industry is. So I think one of the risks, if they diversify into different sectors, the requirements are different. It's going to take more capital.
Yeah, I actually hadn't thought about that, but you're right. And then that actually reminded me also that other VC firms weren't really tapping into the growth of internet companies or the potential they had, because they looked at Google like once in a lifetime thing, right?
Yeah.
But what they weren't realizing is that the internet was growing. There was more and more people joining the internet, and so it was very possible for some of these companies to actually grow super fast and gain a lot of users and growth.
Yeah.
And that would increase the return that they had on the investment, and at the same time reduce the cost because internet was getting a lot cheaper for people to have.
Yeah.
And all the storage and all that stuff.
Yeah, in the case it was talking about Skype and how, because I remember when Skype was being purchased by eBay, and there was it Microsoft or eBay?
First,
I didn't really
I thought it
get
was
that part,
eBay.
but eBay first, then they sold it to Microsoft, right?
Yes.
And I think
Recently.
the founders left. The founders left, and there was all this controversy about the IP is like in question on who owns it, because the owners, like there was some licensing deal where they were just licensing the IP to the companies for like 3 years or something. But in the case, it said that Andreesson and Horowitz were still saying that was a great deal, but other venture capital firms were like, "Ooh, that's a bad deal. That's a disaster." But it seems like they seem to have a better understanding of what the valuation of some of this stuff is, because back when they were forming this back in 2009, like Google was a great investment, but now even today we see there's other companies that have done way better. Like some of the valuations of Airbnb and Twitter and Facebook are like crazy. The amount of growth that those companies have had. So it's like you're in a great industry. If you can pick the winner, there's like no better return you can get anywhere. If you can pick the right winners.
So the next question says, what choices do technical founders have for financing that they didn't have a decade before?
Financing. Maybe talking about technology, right?
In what way? What choices?
Or maybe talking about the model that they were implementing with just not having like very one like well, having like all the power in the board and not just in one specific person or something like that. Let me see.
Yeah, that could be it. Because like you said, it mentioned there was only like three top firms, right, that controlled 95% of the whole market.
Yeah,
I mean, I mentioned how they actually put a marketing team into the A16Z, and a lot of people were actually saying they'd rather, or they recognize, and they would actually Z. So I'm not sure if it's referring specifically for this one or the idea that kind of started opening up that market and giving more options instead of just like the top three.
Yeah, I think that it has to do with, so if you're a company nowadays, or even like, 6 years ago, like where this was talking about, so you could go to a VC and get funding, but then there's other ways you can get funding too. Like the cost of this is lower, but you could get funding from an angel, like you said, Miguel, one who's financially well off, and they could place some money with you. But then there's also, it mentioned incubators, which is you go to a company and they kind of like help you with infrastructure, and they're doing this to a lot of different companies, and they basically will have like a 20% stake if you make it. And so they're just trying to incubate your company. Or there's Starter now too, which is like a crowdsourcing way of, so everyone's like putting in money and they're not really investing in your company, but it's like a promise for you to deliver a product, but it's not like a binding promise. And Oculus kind of did that, and there's some other companies that got seed money or startup money by doing that. So there's a lot more options now, and then there's even, I think the case talked about this other company, and I've heard about it before, where you can go and you go and participate in this group with a bunch of other companies, and it's like a 3-month project, and they kind of coach you and they criticize what you're working on, and you develop kind of a pitch, and then at the end of 3 months they have this all these VCs and angels come, and everyone gets like 3 minutes to pitch their idea. So that's like another thing. But VC way is one, but that's not the only way. There's these other options that a CEO could like find funding with.
Yeah, I guess that company kind of helped it jumpstart again that industry, and just like tech expanded in their own way. Okay, so now it's talking about the Firms compete on their ability to source, pick, and win. You might remember that was part of the case too. How they come in the door seeking money. How does the way A16Z treats its founders differ from the way a traditional VC treats them? Will this increase, decrease, or have no effect? Potential deals A16Z sees compared to the competition. Do you guys remember how they sourced?
Yeah, they were having events constantly. They were inviting people to their office, and like at the very beginning of the case, it was saying how their office is like really busy and there's a buzz constantly. And
so it made the contrast. It said like a traditional VC, the offices were usually empty.
Yeah.
Everyone's out there for their own, looking for their own, company to invest in. And then when they found something, they had to run it through, they give it a name, but just the main boss, right? The manager, whoever was up top, he had to say yes or no. And this kind of was a little bit more like a little more flexible. If they really thought it was a good investment, they could go ahead and do it, right?
Yeah.
Before, they were all entrepreneurs or CEOs and could see potential in deals. And they also mentioned a bit about how big corporations would send their COOs or other officers to Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
They would come and visit them and see how they worked as a network and kind of put them together with the companies that they had invested in.
Yeah.
To perhaps buy the products of the companies that they were funding. I thought that was a really good idea, because that many times as Coca-Cola or those big companies, it's kind of hard to reach those people. But if you put them in the same place, if you network and make that connection, man, big deals can come out of that, and that would benefit. They would love that because it's making a connection with big companies that they're trying to sell to. At the same time, their firm is helping them make that connection, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of those deals can make a big difference for one of these startup companies. If they get a deal with Coca-Cola or something, that can be the
Uh-oh, we're losing you. You're cutting
You
out.
guys hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah, now, yeah.
Yeah, it was like
Did you
they
guys?
were building all those relationships for the sake of building a network, right? It wasn't just we're only going to talk to people who we're going to get something out of. They were just trying to build a network. I think it's great.
Yeah, they treated it more like an agency, where
Or
meeting the
founder
right people,
friendly.
making the right connections would make a difference.
Yep.
Actually, it says here in the case that this kind of industry dynamics had resulted in a more founder-friendly and fundraising environment, which is the same that they were able to make this networking that made possible that different ideas or different projects were, if not gather in the same idea, work together or on the same achievement in order to raise this profit that they wanted. So it was something different for the industry.
Good point.
I mean, yeah, they were playing it differently. They wouldn't go in there and automatically change everything, right? The next question kind of mentions what would happen if they start firing CEOs that weren't performing well. Will it increase, decrease, or have no effect on the number of potential deals A16Z sees compared to the competition? I think it would decrease. I mean, like, other startups get funding, they're going to change you as a CEO. I mean, many of these, you could call them like their babies, right? They've been working at these for years. They started from nothing. And then once you get some money, they just kick you out and say, okay, we'll take over. I don't think that kind of sounds, or at least for me, it wouldn't be the best, right? So if I knew of a VC that would, invest in us and then just kind of help me get to that point, I would prefer going with them. So if they were going to take me out just because they gave me some money, I would probably not go with them.
Yeah.
Of other companies would see it, but I think it would decrease the potential deals.
Just because of the image by itself, right? Because, I mean, if there is not stability within the company or within the project, I think that this same concept is shared to the, not just to the investor, but also to the clients, to the customers. So I think that this impact directly to the shares.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think that their marketing, their branding of who their firm was had to do with that they liked the CEO that was the founder, right? So if they were to start firing him, that'd be going against what their founding principles kind of were. So I agree. Negative impact.
There's another question. It says, how does help A16Z source pick win? Does it increase the odds of getting more high-quality deal flow? If so, why? Does it affect A16Z's ability to pick winners? Does it actually have any impact on the odds of success for A16Z portfolio companies? If so, how? If not, why do you think that? A couple of questions there.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it kind of, we spoke a little bit about it. Like, I mean, the people that they had there as team, or the people that was picked, they were sourcing and selecting the winners, or whoever they were going to pick for a win, they had the flexibility, if they felt good about it, to go ahead and invest, right? The other way would take a lot longer. It probably cost a lot more just to do it. And they knew that if they were in it and they invested and they won, then they would get money. So it was set up so they would make money once the company made money, not before, right?
Yeah.
So they had a real interest in actually helping out instead of kind of just doing it for doing it, you could say, just to get another number in there.
Yeah, a couple thoughts I have. In a few classes prior to this, one of the books that we had to read was the Jim Collins Good to Great Companies book. Did you guys read that?
Yeah.
And it seems like Andreesson and Horowitz, they've got all the people that are the right people on the bus, and they're in the right. So your point about them giving the general partners trust to, if they felt really strongly that they should invest in a company and they're pounding their fist on the table, we need to invest in them, and they wouldn't veto that, they would let that happen. It's like, man, you can only do that if you really trust your partners, because that's a really fast way to lose money if they make bad decisions like that, because that's a lot of money that's going to get flushed down the toilet. But that being said, man, I read through the case a couple times, and it is like a complicated thing on how these guys get compensated and what the percentage of fees and the carrying. I don't know, and how all the compensation works. And I understand that they're putting money in with an idea that they're going to exit at some point. So the company's going to get sold or go public, and then that's when the firm gets their whatever 3 to 4 times their money back. And that's kind of a long haul. But man, the deal flow and all that stuff. I don't know what the answer to how that stuff works, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it kind of mentioned that it would take about 10 years for them to actually start getting money from their investments, and they were just kind of like in year 4.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and the
exactly.
thing is, getting all these deals and getting more people into the pipeline, and I mean, maybe 10 years after is going to start paying off really well, right? The
Yeah.
only thing that got them off to a good start could be that they invested into the Skype thing and then
Yeah.
sold it, because
Exactly.
that gave them like a lot of money, right? So I'm sure that gave them confidence in what they were doing was, the right thing, but it would take it'd take a couple of years, more than about 10 years for them to actually start seeing all that money back. But yeah, the details about how you get your money back and how they get compensated, I'm sure they're a bit complicated to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the NVCA note that 40% of venture-backed companies fail, 40% return moderate amount of capitals, and only 20% or less produce high returns. But they were in this sector because, as you said, it takes 10 years in order that they could see if those investments were good or give some profits. But just in they were in three, we read in the case, or well, at least I found three different funds that they made, and they started with 300 million in 2009. Then in 2010 they raised up 650 million, and then in January 2012 they came up with 900 million. So I think they were really in this 20% that produce the high returns.
Okay, let's see. Our last question has to do with voting. So it says, put yourself in the shoes of Andreesson and Horowitz. You must decide whether or not to seek to double your assets under management and vote as a group. Decision must be unanimous. And then it says, consider the following as you decide: how many portfolio companies can one general partner reasonably support? Are there any economies of scale in this business? Will you have to hire more operating team people? If so,
Mhm.
will the partners actually make more money for doubling their assets, or will they all profits go to hire more people?
And
Wow.
Uh, I didn't get into the numbers actually. I didn't have enough time, but um, we should vote for. What do you guys think?
um, we lost you there for a second. Did you say we should just take an initial vote to see where we stand?
Yeah, we should probably just vote and then we can comment on it.
Okay. Um, my initial thought was not to double.
Well, my initial thought was to um, to seek to grow to maybe not, I don't remember if the specific.
To browse or
You know,
Can you guys hear me?
now we can.
yeah,
Okay, so it mentioned how one of their options was going to international markets like China,
yeah,
and then the other option was, I guess, going into biotech and clean energy or stuff like that,
yeah,
right?
clean energy. Yeah.
And I pretty much went with, if they're scaling pretty good with tech, I got the idea that was a was a good route. Once they got pretty good at what they were doing, they could probably implement that same pattern of business into other markets. But that would be better than going into China where they had to increase and find a whole new network of people for companies in the other side of the world, right?
Yeah, I agree.
In my case, when I first read it, I think that the way I thought that they should that they can or that they should double their assets, but that they should focus in broaden their geography and start investing in international markets because there are a lot of potential uh, opportunities. For example, I started to research a little bit from Mexico, and I found that 15 years ago the first phones were for about 400 million, and today they are up to 42 billion of assets committed for private equity investments, with over 168 active funds investing across other sectors. So I think that just as Mexico, there are other potential markets, not just here in Latin America, but also in other countries that could be very profitable. And those are projects that need the resources, that have all the planning and all the development, but they are not having this opportunity to financing themselves. So I think that companies as A16Z should do a great business investing in this kind of companies abroad that could brought not just a lot of revenues, but also a new maybe a new culture or a new projects that could still give us a lot of benefits as customers, or even some other benefits as, I don't know, some medical or some other uh, application which are more specialized can also have a great impact in the market. So I will vote for it. But it must be unanimous. So what do you think?
Yeah. So McGill, like if you're on the board in Horowitz, then we're gonna vote. Let's break out into international markets and start investing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Well,
oh, go ahead.
it makes how you say it makes sense. Like, yeah, usually companies scale and they grow. Once they grow enough in the US or in the national market, they have to grow, right? They have to continue growing. And so they look for international growth, and that's where it comes from. Um, the question here is saying if this will actually be good for them because they're scaling, but at a small pace, and their pattern is to be very kind of like one-on-one with the companies that they have, right? There's a lot of people invested into one company, and they're paying really good attention, getting their connections. It's kind of tailored to each company. So will that work when they scale? Because I would have to hire a lot more people, a lot more former CEOs, that sorts of people, right? Which I assume there might not be as many. And if they go to a different country, connections, where would you get the connections? How much money will that actually cost? And then the question here says, will the partners actually make more money for doubling their assets? Or will they all of the additional profits go to hire more people? I mean, at some point they weren't even making money, right? It said that they weren't receiving a salary because they were sacrificing for the team for them to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, maybe they would do that again, right? For sake of the company, for sake of the team. They did it once. But I don't know. It's a hard question. For me, it would be very complicated for them to actually go international right now. I would suggest going national, perhaps into a different market that is not far away from what they know right now, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, it doesn't go too far away from their core competencies, right?
Yeah,
Right?
because
Yeah.
yeah, tech companies are a lot different than like, and you mentioned they're medical companies. Um, just the costs, perhaps oil companies, all the other kind of markets, they're very different than the tech company. in the way of how the returns perhaps are and the cost for actually starting a business. But who knows? Maybe tech companies in a different part of the world.
Yeah, one of the things that if you looked at I think it was Exhibit 9, where it showed like the VC firms and how many partners and how many other investment professionals and how many functional specialists they had. Their model, the Andreessen Horowitz model, was like a reverse pyramid. And if you look at that chart, it shows that they have 43 specialists and everyone else has like a few. And so they have every other firm has the most partners and then less investment advisors and then still less functional specialists, but they were backwards. So if you think about an international market, all of their networking and all the functional specialists that they have, their core competencies not in international markets right now. That may be a good move at some point, but to grow now, I would think that trying to find something that's a little closer to what they already do.
Yeah, it might be harder.
Okay. Yeah, I actually got as another argument the foreign exchange rate that, for example, in some countries as Mexico, it's in this case the dollar is getting more appreciation versus the local currency. So maybe it could be an asset. But yeah, I agree with you that maybe just by the company itself or the company culture, I think that it could go against this culture of accelerating growth or investing in different products that are more pure technology, and maybe they could get involved in other markets, and maybe they could this could complicate all the process that have been proved that it's very successful. So maybe just by adding another cities, as it says, New York or different cities within the U.S., I think that they could still have the same. Well, they could maintain the same organization and still getting the same results.
Okay.
That could be unanimous.
I guess that's as unanimous as we're going to get.
Yeah.
It's just kind of complicated to...
Yeah, it is.
It is.
And I don't think there's actually enough time either to get all these questions answered in detail.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything else we should discuss?
Is that it? That's probably it, right?
You good?
Yeah.
So what we need to do now is like put in what minute what mark we have our unanimous vote.
So we're agreeing to expansion in
Local market
in a local
and
market, like a different industry, a different sector.
that aren't so far apart, I would say, from what the tech might be. So their model actually, doesn't have to change that much. So they're not a huge firm either. They don't have, the market share that others have, or perhaps the money that they have. They've been doing well, but within one niche market.
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
Okay.
Okay. Wow.
All right.
So could you send us that? Yeah, I think that would be it. If you can send us that link, Nate.
Yeah, I will. So should I just post it in that Hangout little chat thing? Do you guys have access to that?
Yeah.
Okay,
The one
so
where we communicated before starting, right?
yep.
Yeah, if you can just send it
Yeah.
there. And yeah, I think if we post it on the, what is it? Do we have to post it somewhere
Yeah.
with
I
like the
think
timestamp?
the graph discussion.
Yeah.
There is
The post.
one here.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
All right.
Guys, on
Okay.
Wednesday, is there another one? Yeah, another case, right? Two more?
Yeah.
I think
It's gonna be
so.
weak.
There's a rigorous schedule we're on here.
It
Wow, the
is.
napsy.
Yeah, there's a lot of
A lot of work. Okay.
week 4. Okay, guys. Have a good
Okay.
night.
All right. See you. Have a good
Good
night.
night.
See ya.
All right. See you.